Welcome. In today's presentation, we'll be addressing the psychological insight into Mexico, with a prime focus on the psychological stability of the children. This research was conducted by Jennifer Aguirre, Lisette Castaneda, Gloria Garfield, and Nadine Guerrero. To start off, we'll be addressing an overview of Mexico. Mexico is a country located along the southern borders of the United States. As of 2017, Mexico is home to 129.2 million people. It is estimated that over 52 million people were living in poverty in the year of 2018. Data gathered from Poverty in Mexico. As many may know, when people are placed into a community of an impoverished community, the chances of being victim to crime or witnessing crime are greater than those who are living in the community where there's no crime or there's no poverty present, because crime exists either way, but it's more common in the poorer communities. Mexico is currently under the administration of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. The political party is the National Regeneration Movement, paraphrase Morena, being a social democratic party. The only thing that they have is that presidents are only allowed to serve once and are limited to 6 years in office. To start off our presentation, we'll be addressing the psychological perspectives that have to do with our rising issue. There's 3 prime perspectives that we'll be addressing within our presentation: environmental psychology, cross-cultural psychology, and cognitive psychology. With environmental psychology, we'll be addressing how the environment has an impact on the being of a person, essentially the child. Cross-cultural psychology, we'll be addressing how certain cultures within the country of Mexico address mental illness and how it goes, for the most part, unaware or unimportant, because there are greater issues within their community. And cognitive psychology, where we'll be using the lack of knowledge to address these issues and how they can be fixed and come up with solutions towards the end of the presentation. Within this slide, we offer a breakdown of the problems that Mexico has to address all the issues and connect them to the psychological perspectives. Political corruption, media bribery and censorship, violence, the sidetrack of gang, drugs, and human trafficking, and the nationwide known issue, unaccompanied migrant children, and the trauma and PTSD that comes from it, the mental health, addressing suicide, and the lack of acknowledgement that this issue being mental stability or mental health lacks, like the importance that this issue lacks within this community. And last but not least, we'll be proposing some solutions that we as psychologists think that will have a great effect on this community. We'll be addressing the political corruption. Political corruption is one of the most concerning issues, as shown in the graph to the right of the presentation. following right below crime. Crime being obviously being a very, 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 very great deal of an issue within this country. Political corruption is when the government controls what the people know by bribery, by censorship. They buy the media outlet and they don't inform the people of what they deserve to know. Basically, it's the government's intervention in the major media outlets and in journalism. Journalists have been suppressed, and in some circumstances, the extreme ones, they have even been killed because they don't want to live under the terms of the government. The federal and state office dictates the news. Officials dictate the news. Anti-corruption laws aren't enforced. And so, as shown in this, these are laws. Anti-corruption laws aren't enforced, being the General Administrative Responsibility Law. This law was passed in July of 2017 and calls for the creation of new national anti-corruption system and the appointment of an anti-corruption prosecutor, as well as the Federal Penal Code. The Federal Penal Code criminalizes corruption, active and passive bribery, extortion, abuse of office, money laundering, bribery of foreign public office officials, and facilitations payments. These issues are very common within this community and should be addressed, and that's why the act of political corruption is what leads people to want to leave the country, because they expect more, they want to be heard and want their rights back. But the government, as presented, does not offer it, does not even give them a chance. As shown in the table to the right, within a whole Latin American community, all the countries that are there, Mexico is top in bribery. That isn't a good title to have. In comparison to other Latin American countries, Mexico has the lowest rating of freedom of press. Imagine that, how crazy. Resulting in major censorship. Every 2 out of 3 journalists admits to censoring themselves to appeal the government. So everything is based on what the government wants and needs from its people. Again, money is power, and that's what the government has. It has money, and it lacks that expansion of that money. They only use that money to their own convenience and not to the convenience of their people. A link of violence. Gangs beginning in 1980 with only a couple of different gangs that connected to the Colombian gangs. Now, there are more than 10 large ones connected to many smaller ones. These gangs are connected to other small branches, but therefore there's so many of them, and they run the government so much that they have now controlled everything. And if you don't say what they want, or if you don't say something that benefits them, you, in the worst case scenario, you end up dead. But this happens more than the usual. It happens pretty common within these communities, especially the poor, the more impoverished communities. Drug is also a big issue and one of the links to violence. There has been an ongoing drug war between Mexican gangs in the United States since December 2006. Colombian cocaine, heroin, and cannabis are among some of the different types of drugs. So yeah, obviously drugs hold a big part of what is present in these Mexican communities, affecting these communities and the children in them. in amounts that are unimaginable. Human trafficking is also a big nationwide issue in Mexico and is very present and very common within these communities that are filled with children, and it's just terrifying. In many cases, young women are captured and forced into labor related to drug trafficking and prostitution. Ring of aggression in Mexico. Between 2007 and 2018 alone, over 115,000 people were killed by gang-related violence. Mexico's northern border states have seen increased levels of drug consumption and abuse, including elevated rates of drug injection, 10 to 15 times the national average. Kidnappings, ransom, murders, and robberies and extortions occur as migrants traveling from Central America through Mexico in an attempt to get to the United States and Canada. The forced migration into organizations. So basically, these people seeking for a better future are forced into these gangs, and if they oppose to what they're being forced to, they are killed, they are extorted, they are cut into pieces. It's terrible what is happening in these circumstances. One of these examples is the Guerrero in 2014. This was where more than 40 student protesters were abducted and killed. Mexican investigators found that the mayor had directed police to kidnap the students and hand them over to local drug gang. Imagine that. That connects more to the political corruption that occurs within that. These government officials are being bought by local drug gangs just so they can get their way, or just to convince the people, or have everything run how they want it to run and not to the benefit of the people. Because of these nationwide issues, the rate of migration has obviously, as shown in the graph, been steadily decreasing, but it still remains quite high, being that people are still in search for a better future and are tired of living in those communities where crime is the only thing that gets them around. Crime is the only way that they will be successful. Crime is they're tired of it. They're tired of living in a community where they can't go to the store without being robbed by some cartel or gang, or they can't go to the store, a girl can't go to the store without being taken by these powerful people and raped, or in even more extreme circumstances, even killed. Within recent decades, migration from Mexico to the United States has been steadily decreasing. As I said, quantity is still very relevant. So yeah, these numbers are still very common and very high up there. So people still continue to search for a better future. Little do they know, these people are basically fleeing from danger into more danger. The circumstances that these people that have to go through are beyond a nightmare. An attempt to escape the violence, thousands migrate to the States in search for a better future every year. Imagine that, every year. And out of these thousands of people, a portion dies because of the conditions that happen, the conditions of the deserts, the running water, the strong currents of Rio Grande that they have to cross. One case being in 2019, a 25-year-old father, Oscar Alberto Martinez Ramirez, drowned as he tried to swim across to his wife with his 23-month-old daughter in his arms. Him and his 23-month-old daughter died as a result of the heavy water. So it's not like these people are seeking, it's not like these people are choosing to move to the United States just because. It's they're leaving it in search of a better future. They're risking their lives to get somewhere in life. Along the borders, the violence does not disappear. Crime remains pretty relevant in all levels. Women are sexually harassed and in many cases forced to have sexual relationships in exchange for not getting turned into the border patrols. This is actually very common. There has been tons of cases of women that have been crossing over the past decade that have shared the stories to address this wide known issue, but there's not much attention pressed to it because obviously these people are coming here illegally and people don't want to press attention to something that is being done illegally. They obviously want them to wait and to wait the correct way, like most people say. Another worldwide issue is that sometimes parents leave their children alone in Mexico, but those children end up having to move up north or cross the border by themselves, actually. In some cases, if they're captured by these border patrols, or if they are applying for asylum here in the United States, they are forced into these immigration facilities where they wait long months. Some of these facilities only hold parents, being that they're only women and they're separated from their husbands, or in some cases, some extreme cases that are present, they only hold children. Some of these people have addressed some important and experts have addressed this issue to describe the conditions to media outlets to expose the inhabitable conditions that these children are expected to live in. Dr. Sarah Goza shared on her tour when she toured 2 CBP facilities in June. The first thing that hit me when we walked in those doors was the smell of sweat and urine and feces. No amount of time spent in these facilities is safe for children. Officer of Inspector General report of Rio Grande, children at 3 of the 5 border patrol facilities we visited had no access to showers and limited access to change of clothes. The same Office of Inspectors said, "We observed that 2 facilities had not provided children access to hot meals until we arrived." Dr. Dolly Lucio Sevier in McAllen, Texas, depicted that the conditions within which they are held could be compared to torture facilities. Extreme cold temperatures, lights on 24 hours a day, no adequate access to Medicare and basic sanitation, water, or adequate food. This being these issues that occur in all these facilities from the very start, from the very moment that they are born into these countries, they're presented with violence, with crimes that in our everyday lives as listeners we don't even think about, but they are exposed to these crimes every day, and so this has to lead them to some type of psychological trauma. In some extreme cases has led many to have PTSD. According to Hansen, a doctor, Situations that can cause such trauma include violent attacks, fires, physical or sexual abuse, acts of violence such as shootings, and witnessing another person go through these kinds of traumatic events. When any of these events occur, one, especially a child, could potentially be a victim to post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. This is a disease that is very common within the Army community. It's a very traumatizing event that something to like brave. They're grown men and they go overseas and they see all these horrible things. Well, children are now being diagnosed with PTSD as a result of all the violence that they see, but not enough recognition they're not receiving enough recognition with it. Their illness is not receiving attention. They're not getting any better. Under specific circumstances, the children are forced to live in immigration facilities. These children are separated from their parents and are locked in cages where they know no one but themselves. These strenuous conditions traumatize the children, thus affecting their environmental psychology. Environmental psychology has a lot to do with developmental stages of a child. It can affect them, if not mentally, growth. Well, obviously the way they grow, because of an environment has everything to do with the way a child grows, and it all lives and thinks. Well, all these conditions and all these traumatizing events have a dramatic effect on the psychological perspectives that these psychological needs that these children are in need of. More attention needs to be brought into these issues. Mental health is also very very relevant like anywhere else in the world, but in Mexico it's different because not enough attention is being shown. There's a mindset in certain communities within this country that you either get over it or get over it. Like, you have bigger issues to deal with, like crime, as obviously is a bigger issue, so not enough attention is being given to mental health. Currently, there are only 4,600 psychiatrists in Mexico. 60% of them are in Mexico City, Jalisco, and Nuevo Leon. Well, as shown, 60% of them, the other 40% are spread apart in these rural areas. Some areas don't even know what that is. They don't think about mental health. They don't think about it and prioritize it, and so that's where it harms them, and that's where it's shown. Resources are insufficient and in many cases can be only found in psychiatric hospitals. People don't go searching for these because they don't give it importance. There was this one case, her name was 27-year-old Denise, that was diagnosed with depression and anxiety in 2015. Denise was on a 12-hour bus ride, and while on the bus ride, she tried to get some rest, but there was a man on the bus who kept touching her. She reported and everything went smoothly. She mentioned she was on medication for mental health. As shown, mental health there's, like anywhere else, this is a very relevant issue, but not enough attention is being shown to it. And so we've proposed these 4 solutions. Prioritizing education, number 2. Budgeting more money for education and mental health. And number 3, sharing information and spreading awareness. Number 4, exposing framework for the system in a secure manner. With number 1, by putting the children's education needs first, we can spread awareness and educate more on mental health. This would help begin to remove the stigma by normalizing the subject. In many cases, attending school isn't possible with the poorer economy in some regions, which means less children and teenagers attend school or quit to work to help their parents financially. Number 2, budgeting more money for education and mental health. This would help bring education to rural areas and will help children be able to afford schooling with this money can help them with uniforms, books, supplies, and food. Budgeting for mental health would allow for doctors to be hired and more public health facilities to specialize in psychiatric homes. Now, this correlation with the first two, with number 3, sharing information and spreading awareness. Well, when we share information and spread awareness, it's just connecting to the cognitive behavior. We're informing the public. Well, all 3 perspectives are connected. We're informing the public and trying to make change. Make change. Why? Make change because these children deserve this change. These children deserve to grow up in an environment that they can grow freely and play anywhere they want without having to worry about crime occurring, without having to worry about this, right? And to help these children that have actually experienced these events, we can help them by presenting knowledge. We can provide mental health education. We can provide them knowledge with what is going on in their head, like they might feel so alone, and we can provide that for them. We can provide help. We can provide them a hand to lean on. We can provide just some for them not to feel alone in general. Well, these are our sources. Thank you so much for listening. This has been a psychological insight into Mexico. Thank you.